welcome to Mapping Ties, Susagna. So today I'm really excited about this conversation because I actually met Susagna on the Corporate Rebel Academy. So we first met as we were learning about companies who are doing things differently and who are looking at revolutionizing the way that we work. And then as we talked, we realized that we were both actually quite passionate about building communities and using this as a way of actually doing workplace differently as well and connecting people in the workplace. So then it was an obvious next step for Susagna to come and share her stories with everybody through Mapping Ties. So thank you very much for being here. And if you want, you can start maybe by telling us a little bit about you, what you do, but also how you ended up working with building communities and what it brings you.
Yes, thank you, Sophie. Thank you for the invitation. And yeah, I'm really excited about the conversation. Let's see where it takes us today. So I was born and raised in Barcelona, and I was very curious since a child. I was always wanted to know how things worked and things like that. And because I was born next to the sea, I just wanted to understand the sea, lifting, stones and things like that. And that brought me to, at the end, study biology and become a scientist. So actually everything comes from there. And 13 years ago, I moved to Switzerland. So now I'm also Swiss adopted. And here in Switzerland, I started my studies and I went from academia to industry. So I studied the industry as a scientist. And I had all these, expectations of how industry will be like. I thought everything will work super well, professional, they would be knowing what they have to do. And I came in, I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's not so different, right? It's also a group of people working, trying to do whatever they can. And I joined industry in a research environment with scientists. And researchers tend to think a lot that science is enough to get where they want to get. And very early on, because of that curiosity, I thought, no, actually not. You need other things to be successful and to move things ahead. And at the beginning, I was trying to create structures where scientists could advance their projects and be successful and see if they are, worth medicines or not. And this turned into more project management, things like that. And it was working, but there was also something missing. So then the next step was like, okay, wait a minute. I also need to work on the environment, how they come together, how they discuss, how they grow, how they develop. So it was a lot about working on their capabilities, but also creating the environment where they could do science. And I think that at that point, I started to create communities, but I was not so conscious about it right now. You know what I mean? Years after, I say, wait a minute, that was it. But I just was out of need and this scientific curiosity about what can I do so that it's better. And I think that's what I've been doing for many years now. After time and time, my role has changed. I have different titles right now. I'm focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and on capability development, again, for scientific communities, right?
Amazing. And so you described the way that you worked through it by first bringing in structures and processes, and then actually finding that by experimentation that there was one piece missing and bringing the people together. So how the first time that you did it, because from our previous conversations, I know that you actually working with lots of different groups, communities, forums. So what was the first time that you really structured a group and brought together a group in this company?
Yes. I've been thinking a bit about it since you and I connect, and I became aware that actually I was looking right now at the archive and the files, and I realized that this first community that we worked on it's going to be soon 7 years old.
7.
And yes, 7 years, and I was so proud, like, oh my God, it's still going on, and they still did it. So I had this proud moment, and this whole thing started 7 years ago, and there was one leader that thought that this was needed. This leader didn't know exactly what was needed, but he wanted the project leaders in research to come together. So he basically contacted me and he was like, we need a forum. just go and try and do whatever you want to. And I think he already knew me a bit, so he knew that I would experiment and find the best. And so that's how we started. And it was my first time. I didn't know exactly what it meant. So again, I started to use my curiosity and the scientific method, which is like, okay, check a bit the data, make an hypothesis, test it, and go ahead. And I think that's also part of the success of the communities we've worked on. And that adaptation and evolution, data would be like, listen to what people need, what they tell you, make a hypothesis, test it. If it doesn't work, go ahead, not adapt it, right? So this is sometimes why we say scientists at work. And at that time, I was just looking at what was the need, what was the gap, why should they come together? And I realized that in this group, in these researchers, they were scattered. They talked to each other if they were friends, they worked for a long time, for example, or they would go and talk to someone if they knew that that person was very experienced. But they never came together as a community to say, what do we need? What are we doing? What are our challenges? What do we do very good, right? So I realized, okay, only bringing them together probably will be something that will change their life. And the other thing that I realized is that, and we talked about it, a lot of them are early in career people. Some of them stay here in this phase of drug development for a long time. Others go somewhere else. But there's a big early in career community. But the ones that stay and that stay very long become these experts, these mentors. And there are 2 or 3, and everybody goes to them. So these people are overwhelmed because they get so many requests. They cannot fill them all, right? And the others are so eager to tell me how we can do it. So I think that was the magical thing that established the community at the beginning. Yeah.
Right.
And actually the first thing I did is just invite this person to speak, and everybody came because this person was so like, wow, it's like famous,
So you mean the expert as part of the community?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then it was a way to make that expert voice able to answer questions for everybody at the same time, rather than wasting a lot of time in one-to-ones.
Yes.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think that's actually a goal or an outcome of community that that is not necessarily the first one that comes up. So I like that you shared that. Thanks. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that bringing them together, you saw that it had the potential to change their life.
Yeah.
And I think I completely agree with this. There are definitely some of the communities that I've either at work started or been part of that have definitely changed my work life, at least, and then by extension life in general. So what did you see was the biggest impact on their work life as the community started and grew?
I think in different phases there were different different impacts or different value adding things. So at the beginning, this fact of connecting with each other. So they would talk and they would say, wait a minute, we have the same needs. I actually, for example, a person could say, I always missed this and this and this. And now I realize you also miss it. I was always looking on my own. How could I fix those things? And now that everybody has the same need, we all together can say, hey, we need this, right? So that was something that changed. And at the beginning, we did a lot of inviting people to explain them how things work from other departments, from the whole drug development process, so that they would be more informed about how the system works. And this gave them advantage as project leaders to drive their projects. So this was, in the first phase, one of the biggest things. Then later on, as a second phase, I think probably almost a year afterwards, when they already were connected, there was another phase coming where I asked them, right, now that you're a community and you know more about drug development, you have all your projects, you can also say, well, there are things that are not working for us. The company is organizing certain things in a way that doesn't work for us. If we come together as a community and have a voice and say, look, this doesn't work for us and this is how we would solve it, you're much more powerful than if you're an individual on your own, right? So this became the second step, raising them up. Also, it was elevating their leadership as in the community, but also then in the projects, right? So it had also a collateral effect. And then they were starting saying, well, there's a new process in place. Well, can we have a voice? Can we participate in shaping the process? Or actually something that is established for a long time, can we change it because this is not working for us? So that we started creating these round tables where they would observe new things or things that were there for a while, discussing it and then saying, okay, we have a request for you to the leaders. So this was in a second phase where I really like about the community. Yeah. And then I would say that after that, there was the time where they said, wait a minute, now we want to elevate ourselves as leaders. And then we created a whole year program for them to work on the leadership effectiveness. So we had a tool so that they became self-aware, like a 360, and then a collection of modules where they would work on the skills that came out of those assessments. And they started working on how to lead better projects. Yeah.
Okay. So really going from getting together, helping each other, which was the first stage, then into influencing outside once they had built that belonging and really the community, and then going back to helping each other again, but with a very structured like program. So really you can see the building of a movement in what you describe. Is really interesting.
Yes.
And so throughout this, when, how often do they connect?
It's funny because it's the same now as at the beginning. We always, now I say they because I'm not there anymore, they meet always once a month. So there is as a whole community, they meet monthly in an hour and a half virtual call because they are scattered around countries and locations. And then we also try to have like these offsite events. So once we went for this 3-day in-person event all together, and I think they did it over again then when I left. And this was created in one of the disease areas in this company. There are other disease areas, and there was a moment where the other disease areas jumped in, and they also created their communities. So every now and then, these communities, they find each other also all together, like the global one across disease areas, and they also come together in person for a whole day. Yeah. How it worked, once a month.
So talking about that movement building up, that you even got to that stage where others copied and it became almost like a franchise as a community. So it's a great. And when so you said it's other diseases, so other parts of the company working on different diseases, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when other disease segments started to build similar communities, how did then an overarching level also develop, or does it just stay at the segment level and then they meet from time to time? How do they relate to each other?
So when the other disease areas wanted to also create that, and that actually happened because the leader that was in our disease area then became kind of the head of the whole R&D space. And this person said to the other disease areas, have you heard what they are doing in oncology? Why don't you go and just do it, right? It would be super cool. We started discussing how we do it. And there was this moment where we thought, why don't we just expand it? We have one community across R&D and that's it. But then we realized that every disease area has certain specificities. So we decided to keep the community in every disease area, and there you discuss really the things that are relevant for those kind of projects, those kind of project leaders. But still, they wanted to connect. So at the end, what they did is they were meeting once a year across disease areas in person, tackling things that are important for all. It could be project leadership skills. It could be mentoring moments about project leaders that are really well known for being successful in an R&D, independent of disease area, and bringing them, or talking about also parity, right? Men, women, things like that. But that was something like that is common once a year, and then every disease area keeps their monthly rhythm separately. Yeah. And I think that also that turned into there is a core team for every disease area that leads those communities, and then we have a core team for the global one.
Right, so there is also a global one, but it's more seasonal. So you say mainly once a year there's activity there, and most of the activity is still at the local or the segment disease level. Okay. And it's funny how you mentioned that actually it's this leader, when they moved from the local to the global role, they took the project with them, and they had also been at the beginning the catalyst for it. So obviously a big sponsor. And what do you think they had in mind when they asked for this forum to be created? And then how did you, because I imagine that with them you then review the progress, review whether it was a success. So how did you do that to see if that aligned with their original vision?
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know exactly like the real need inside of that person for asking for this. Because of several conversations, I would say now, sometimes and it's probably because of the early in career. So that if there is a big proportion of people in early in career, you really need to equip them with new skills and capabilities as they come to industry. So probably that was coming from there, and realizing that these people were disconnected. This leader also was the person that was sitting in the decision committees about whether projects go ahead or not or get certain funding. So probably this leader was seeing, okay, I expect more from that. So this also replies to our question. I think, and I was thinking about it when I thought about what was the value that this community added and the impact, and it's that the way the project leaders then presented and defended their projects at decision committees changed and increased. And I heard it from the community and also from the leaders in time. And now we tend to forget about it because it was 7 years ago, right? But after 3 or 4 years, people were like, wow, that was a change. And I think that was the measure. It was like a perceived change. We didn't have like measures that we really follow with like KPIs or something like that. Now I would do it differently because now I consciously create a community, right? But it was more a sense of wait a minute, the projects are much more defended or expressed or presented when they come for decision making, right?
I find this this leader, really impressive because they saw a need of developing the project leaders basically. And instead of saying, right, we're going to do a training program and everybody will have to sign up for it, they actually approached one of them and said, why don't you guys try to, elevate each other, basically, which has worked really well and probably better than any mandatory project management or project presentation program. So it's really inspiring to have this instinct to go and actually empower people to solve a development need that you see. It's it's quite impressive.
It's a lot of trust, right? Yeah, I also see.
Yes.
Thinking about this person, and this person ultimately left the company. There were actually two people. They came in at different stages, but they were connected, and they both showed a lot of trust in the people that they were leading. Yeah.
And actually, even in the fact that I think you're saying now maybe you are using KPIs, etc., but in this beginning phase to give it the space to grow without reporting on numbers, etc., which would actually create quite a bit of external pressure to build a community. That's also again like a really high level of trust, and I think it's not always the case. Like there's often a quick need to report back hard figures and hard results. So it must have participated to the success to have this actual space to create it.
I think we didn't consciously do that, but I think what they saw is the engagement, how many people were showing up at the meetings, and then the activities of the community, right? So there was a moment where it was not only the community that was going out and saying, wait, this process is not working, and now I'm coming to you to request that you're changing it. But it also happened at some point that when another part of the organization wanted to put something in place, a new process, a new way of doing whatever change, they came to the community to engage the community. Yeah. They knew that it was a crucial step to then making their project successful. Yeah. And I think all of that the leaders were aware of this, because at the end of the day, they are approving or not approving some of those things. The name of the community was popping up in a lot of conversations. And I think that's how the leaders also knew that it was working.
Yeah. And I wish that's something that actually we could measure, like how often a name pops up is probably a very good measure for, unless it's in the negative sentences, but usually it isn't. So seeing how often it naturally pops up in conversation is probably a very good measure for how integrated the community impact is. So this started 7 years ago and probably built over time into all of the different areas that they started to cover. And you said that you actually created it, but then also exited. And I'm really curious about this part, because we often talk about or hear saying, "Oh, communities must be self-sustained, etc." And we know that in the reality, it's very different from this. So I'd like to know more about your experience of leading a community and then handing it over. How did you do this? Was there another leader taking over? How did you manage the exit process?
It's a good question. If I think about it now, it feels natural, but actually it builds on all the things you do before, right? So when I started with this request, I was on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So I was alone, organizing everything, creating the content, always asking, really always based on feedback from the people that were creating the community. But I was doing all of that on my own. And at some point, I realized that across the sites that we have in the company and where these project leaders are based, there was a side that was not as engaged as others. And I also started to have a lot of work to do because the community was working, so I had a lot to do. So I decided to create a core team that would work with me and consciously choose one person from each side. So at that time I was thinking, I have to engage that side. Why are they not showing up? I need somebody that tells me what's going on, right? Yeah. So we created this core team, and then they engaged the people from the sides. They were bringing the feedback. Everybody had a different role. We were working together. And then there was this phase where we were working like that a lot. So at some point, it was easy for me to start delegating things until I was not needed anymore. And they are self-organized. And here the key was the people that we chose, right? At the beginning, it was all voluntary. And I think it's still voluntary. It's very important to see who are the volunteers. And then, and also that you have this courting conversation, like, is it still something you want to do, or do you want to stop it? Do you want somebody to take over? And here, very interesting that in this core team, we didn't fix that resistance from that side that didn't show like 100% of the community until we changed the person that represented that core team, right? So I think it's so important who is leading the community, if it's one person, the one person that started it, or the people that take over. It's really key. Like how that person believes in that, the energy that this person puts there, and then, calls people to come in. So this is key for everything that I do right now. Right now, I'm now starting a new community, and I'm so consciously choosing who will be there to make sure that maybe I don't even need to be there from the beginning. You know what I mean? Yeah. So at some point, it was natural. I started delegating. My role also was changing in my job. And I also went twice in maternity leave during these 7 years. So these were little tests, like, okay, I'm going for 7 months or like 6 months or 5 months, it depends on the kid. And I just went twice, but. And then I was like, okay, how are you going to do this while I'm away? Because these are my tasks, and they were taking them over. So when I came back, it was like, oh, it went well, right? Maybe you can continue. Yeah. So it was a bit a natural process. Yeah.
Okay. I like what you mentioned about the people and the impact you saw when you changed the person who represented a certain site in the core team. So what do you think were the characteristic, and rather than talking about specific people here, talking generally about community leaders or community core people, what are the characteristics that you think are necessary to be able to engage and lead a community?
Yeah. I think it's one. This person needs to believe that the community needs to exist. I think that's the one. Needs to believe in the power of the community, right? And then everything falls into place, I think.
So I guess it's about like how genuine the commitment is versus maybe having been nominated to do it without believing.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That happened in this situation. The first person that we had, I don't think this person was resistant, like, no, we don't need this, la la la. But this person, I think, said, yeah, that's nice. It's a nice to have, right? Nice. Maybe there are some benefits, but that's it. The person that took over had other needs and saw the need of this community for the success of their role professionally. And then it made a big change. And now that I think about it, when we created this overarching community, the global one across disease areas, they actually said also, we need people in the core team. So I naturally went from my side, from my disease area, and we also called from the other disease area. In one disease area, there was one person coming, and also the engagement was not there. And in time, what happened is that that community dissolved and it didn't continue. So now what we have is that one disease area doesn't have that community, even though the others are meeting globally. So I think that's key. That's really important.
So passion. Because if you're the first one in the movement, then you need passion to convince the next followers to join.
Yes, but passion, and I would say need, because I think these people realize that if they don't have the community and everything that happens in the community, they are not as good as they are in their job, right? They cannot do their project leadership job as good as they do when the community exists. And I think that's also very important.
Yeah, so almost a need to develop this community for even selfish reason, because you can see how much better you will be and your life will be if this works out. So definitely.
And the projects then they are more successful.
And then as you exited the community for project leaders, I know that you then also started to work on other projects in terms of bringing people together in your company. So do you want to maybe pick one of the other projects that you work on and tell us more about it?
Yes, so I created several forums like that, more like professional forums that I would say they are communities, but we call them forum internally. But then I also created other communities. So I'm also part of, for example, what we call diversity networks internally. So they are based on diversity topics. It could be gender, it could be sexual orientation, or ethnicity and race and things like that. And I've been doing a lot of work for the woman group, but I think one of the things that I like to talk about right now, and it's a different way, but we are creating a community right now for people leaders. So, not project, because the one we talked about is about project leadership, right? Which is matrix leadership. You need a group of people that are working together in the project, but you're not responsible for their performance, their development, and so. And now we are creating this community that is about that. In a critical moment in our company where we need to work on how we deliver. So there's a lot of pressure, and apparently people leaders have a role to play, right? And we are creating that, and it's kind of starting from the beginning again. We tested it last year, and again it was the same, like, okay, what do they need? Why will they show up? Right? How am I going to change their life if I create this community? And then I was reflecting how I started in this community and how I start now. And lately I went to a training about experience design, and I realized that I'm doing some, now they gave us a model, right? And I realized I'm always doing something that is key for people to show up. For me, the most important thing is that people show up, and then you can show them what's the benefit. But if they don't show up, how are you going to show them, right? So it's key to work on this excitement piece so that they come. They are attracted and they come. I did that with that expert that everybody wanted to talk to, and I put him on spot so everybody could show up. And in this time, it was the same, like listening first to them. What is your need that people need, what's not working for you? And then in the first call we organized, trying to announce that we will fill that need, right? So that's what we are doing. But it's very early stages. So, and it's also evolving again. This was created in a disease area. Now we are expanding across disease areas. So we had to stop. Actually, this time we didn't decide to do it like in all disease areas, but do it globally. But we want to have that personal component where you meet face to face. Right. So we are thinking about how we create like a virtual thing and an in-person thing. We are developing it right now. And I feel it's very different if you have done it a couple of times and you have thought about it, you have discussed it with people like you, and you consciously know that you're creating a community. It's very different, right? That from the beginning is like, oh, test.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you tested in your first community that you learned from, and that now you're doing things differently from what you learned? So what is it that you're maybe not repeating from the first time?
Yes. I already started with feedback. So I went out and I said, I want to do a community. What is your biggest challenge as a people leader? Tell me. And people were telling me this. And then every time we have a community event, there is a moment where we ask them, what is your biggest challenge, or what is your biggest challenge on this topic? So it's all the time based on feedback between every interaction. What I did in the past, maybe I started like with what I sensed they needed. I was talking to people, so a bit of feedback there's always there, but testing and see if it worked, maybe prototyping a bit. And so, and then maybe I would run it for a while and then do like this retrospective that is based on feedback. Now it's different. I use feedback all the time, constantly, to see if the community shifts as we go. So, and create the core team from the beginning.
Right.
Yes.
So 2 lessons learned that anybody who is starting can implement straight away is feedback every day and core team from the beginning. That's be quite good. I'd be interested in diving a bit deeper into the feedback piece and see, so you said there's one question that you ask often is, what is your biggest challenge? So kind of understanding their obstacles. And how do you ask it? So, writing, discussions, etc. And then are there any other questions that you ask? So tell us a bit more about your process for feedback.
Yes, that's a very good one. It's integrated within the whole community event, I would say. So I did have a moment where there's a survey before we start the whole project, let's say. So we would hear a bit. But then at the first community event, I don't know how you organize like the events, but for us, we always start with this typical check-in, question. You put them in breakouts, they go somewhere, they discuss about something. Already there, I'm already asking them for feedback with a specific question. So, for example, if the whole event is about new performance practices or whatever, at the check-in, the question would be already like, right now with a new process, what is not working for you, or what are you afraid that you will have to apply at the next conversation with your employees about with this new performance? And then they exchange between pairs. So already the check-in has a question where they are giving us feedback about why do they need to connect somehow. And then during the rest of the event, it can be we ask them something and they put it in the chat, or we give them a challenge to solve and they go into an exercise or a case study, whatever it is. All the parts of the event give us feedback about what's not working for them, and if they come together, how can they fix it, right? So, and then we are giving them solutions as we are going through the event or afterwards, as a way so that they realize why they are at the event. Okay, I'm coming, I'm telling them that this is not working. They're already giving me solutions. And this attracts for them to come back, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the way that you approach this feedback and discovering what is an obstacle for them, etc., is really integrated throughout all of the events, the meetups, and all of all of what's happening in the community.
Yes. And for example, at the event, when we close up the event, there's always this moment, what do we need to discuss next at the next community event? And they tell us there already. what they want. And then I really follow it up, right? Because if you do something like that, and then at the next event, you just bring a topic that you had in mind, but they didn't tell you they need, then they're like, forever, I ignore it, no? So I always react to their feedback, because if not, you lose that trust. Yeah.
So it's the way for you to really co-create and co-design the space with the members.
Yeah.
So what you see coming from the members in terms of interests for topics or issues that they have in their work, how does this align with the original business objectives for the community? And maybe you can tell us a bit more about how it started and what was the catalyst, and then if it aligns with this.
Yes. There are many. I like that a lot when several places or people in a company, they realize that something is not working, they think about why something is not working, and they all come to the same place at the end, right? So this happened, I would say, last year in different ways, but from one of my sites is from the woman group. We were just checking the data that we had available to see why we don't have parity at certain leadership levels, right? And then we got the data, we analyzed it, we came to the root causes, and we identified leadership effectiveness as one of the problems. So then we went back to the organization and said, we need our people leaders to work on this and this and this, because if not, we are not getting to gender parity. And at the same time when we were doing that, there were people from other communities that I also worked on that they were doing a similar exercise, and they came with the same request. And I think on top, like the highest executive levels of the company, they also realized that there was a need to work on leadership effectiveness. So everything came together, and then you say, okay, it's now time for this. So that's what I love, when the whole system is sensing that there is a need. So that's why we are creating that community that stems out of a whole journey for people leaders. So there is like an upskilling journey with modules where they practice and they learn. So it's educational, theoretical, but also practice. And to that, there's a community piece, which, I always integrate community in everything that I do. So of course, there's also this piece. Yeah. So that's
of course, there's community.
Yes.
That's the way we do everything.
And now replying to the business need. So because we have this pressure internally right now at our company to really deliver better, we do believe that if we have better leaders, more effective leaders, and we could talk about what effective means, right? Because everybody can understand a different way. We do believe that we would deliver better our projects and then our business. So it's part of the priorities of the company right now. Yeah.
Right. And then how does this align with, for example, for the members, were they feeling the same need of improve their leadership, practice their leadership together? How did you feel it from the member side?
That's, good question. Everybody's in a different space. Some people may say yes. There's always these people that are eager to grow and do things better, and so they are always engaged to these things. There's also a part of the community that says, what? I mean, I'm already good at it, and maybe they are not aware that they are not as good at it, and we all need to grow and learn, because, life and the world is changing. So you can be good at it right now, tomorrow you need to develop something else. And there is also this part of the community that think that they don't have time for this, because most of these people are scientific leaders and people leaders. So they're like, science is enough. That we come back to also one of the things that I observed at the beginning. Science is enough. I don't have time for this. If I have scientific conversations with my people and my team, that will be enough. So we have different people at different places. That's why it's key, the attraction moment, right? You have to attract all these different communities. The 100% resistant people, they are not going to show up at that. It's only a small part of the community. But we have to be cautious that they all show up. And what we are thinking right now, and it's not my favorite thing, but we are doing it, part of it we're making mandatory. Not the attendance to the community, but being in the journey. So these educational skills incorporating 360 feedback, and so it's becoming something that you have to do if you want to be in a role like that. And that also helps, right?
So education, when you are a people leader, then education on leadership skill is mandatory, whereas signing up to the people leaders community is opt-in.
Yes.
Okay.
But how do I do that? So how I'm consciously designing the community right now in a way that they need to show up, because they are going to get something essential to do their job. And as we have this focus on, you need to do your job very well because you are key for our delivery.
Yeah.
I'm creating spaces where they come. Again, these people were very scattered. I think the community is all about that, right? These people are very scattered. They don't talk to each other as a community at all. So when you bring them together, they will see the need, but also they will get information that they usually don't get. Because as they are scattered, if the company has something essential that they want to share with them, it's very difficult to reach them all because they are here, 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 here. Now, if they are all here, super easy for the organization to give them that information. So that is one of the things I'm using right now to attract them.
Attract.
Yes.
And it feels like this community, compared to maybe your first one, is much more linked to business objectives and with a clear wish from the business. And I guess then it comes with a lot of other questions, like how do we attract as many as possible, because actually this is part of our culture and we want people to work on their people leadership skills. And then the fact that it's linked to something else that is mandatory, I guess that creates a very different dynamic and different questions as the community leader, because it feels like this one is more intertwined with the business objectives.
Yes. So it is. There was a team of people put together to observe the gap and then come with a solution. The solution was this journey that has community. And the conversation we have with this project team is very different. Everything is very different than when I was alone, like, photo, what should it look like? Why? Right? So, and I think people that are in this team are people like me that either had this experience or know that coming to create that community because it's needed for the business. So the conversations are very different. How we measure, everything is different. It's also fun. I think both things are fun.
Yeah. Yes, but it's true that it's a slightly different way. When I don't know, I tend to sometimes describe them as some that are like grassroots communities, where some are curated, like kind of curated by executive leadership or curated by a function. And I think it comes with a different approach and different challenges as well.
100%. I'm just thinking right now, another community that is being born as we speak, and I find that's another thing that I like to observe. There was a person that had a need for a community and came to me. And my job is not community builder, but they just know. And this person came to me and said, there is a need in the organization, and it is when you are in reproductive age and you're trying to conceive and it's not working. There's a journey in infertility, in perinatal loss. Some people make it, some people don't. Some people have kids and actually they die very early also. And it's very difficult to have these conversations in the organization, but it's very easy to celebrate, this person had a baby, let's write a card, make presents. And so there was this need from this person, and we are creating the community. Again, it's grassroots. They come to me because they say, like, we need support. We know that you know how to do it, but they are creating it. And now it's one person out of 2 people, 3 people. This is something else. And this work is out of passion, out of need also, but really out of passion, as we talked about. I also see it, for example, with the LGBT community. It's just like community is like, it creates, it evolves, everybody contributes. It's very different. This other one that we were talking about right now, it's structured. It has like its rhythms. It has its engagement with the leaders. The conversation is really completely different.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize the difference, and and to verbalize it as well for others in the company to help manage expectations. Because these that are like grassroots, and often it's a lot of ERGs or communities of interest. Sometimes I think for stakeholders, they might see this and be like, oh, we want this, but because we need to develop this capability or this skill.
Yeah.
And then actually it will be a different dynamic in something that is more curated, and with co-creation and doing all of this work of understanding what people's obstacles are, we will be able to build a genuine community. But it tends to take more time compared to something that is linked to people's life, to people's emotions, where they've been craving for other people to tell them you're not alone. Then you, like you say, it's like wildfire. So yeah. I also have the same, similarly, I work on learning communities as my main job in the company. And then I co-created a community of interest, which is a support network for working parents in our company. So we also touch on the topic of infertility and like issuing guides for even colleagues to know how to talk infertility and baby loss, to talk to colleagues who come back maybe and after miscarriage, etc. So we're trying to work on this, and it's completely the dynamics are completely different for sure, and the speed at which people, I think, open up is very different, because there was a craving for this space to find the similar people.
Yes. I think both they influence the system. One maybe is more about capability building, so that there's business delivery, more directly influencing the business delivery. The other ones are creating this space first for them to feel safe, but then they start influencing the system and creating inclusion. And at the end, you also influence the system because people feel more comfortable and they deliver better. But the impact is not so direct. It's more like, influencing it from another side. But at the end of the day, I think we need both kind of communities.
Yes, I think so. And I've got a final question, I think, for you. And I really like how you described your starting point earlier, where you were wondering, okay, how can I change people's life to start designing the space for the second community for people leaders? And so now I'm going to be very curious and be like, how did becoming, and actually congratulations for being now the community expert. I think that shows how much you've invested into building these groups. But so now that you are, the official or unofficial community expert in your company, how did it change your life to be a community builder, to create this connectedness in your company? How did it change your personal work life and life?
That's a very good question that I was not expecting. I actually understand life as a a way of connection. So I think my life purpose is to connect people, not only people to people, but people to things, to bigger things, to ideas, to progress, to it's just, I understand everything as a connection. And the more I do that, the more I feel like fulfilled. I think I'm doing something meaningful for the world, right? And ultimately, and I discovered this at this training that I went recently on experience design, is that I feel that if I connect people and I make them understand each other, and I expand the good in the world, and then I isolate the bad in the world. So people stop being angry and annoying the neighbors, and we all understand that somehow we are all connected. So it's giving me purpose and meaning in life, I would say. Yeah, it's very philosophical, but
no, I think it's good. I think that's exactly what we all aspire to. Finding something that we can do every day that actually gives you purpose is probably the best feeling that you can achieve. And you gave us also a perfect closing for today's episode. Do something good for the world, build communities.
Yeah, exactly.
Our motto going forward. Right. Thank you so much for coming to my Pink Ties. It was great. I loved going into the details of both and or more groups that you've worked with. So thanks for sharing all of your experience with us.
Thank you, Sophia. I feel honored to be here. I had a lot of fun discussing, as always, with you. And I hope that this episode also helps more people connect. So thank you.